We are live.
Oh, we are. Hi, I'm Margaret Schaus.
Hello, I'm Brandon Tetzers. Welcome everyone. This is Not Therapy Hour. Um, Margaret and I are both licensed therapists, but this is not therapy for very, very many reasons. This is just an open conversation. Margaret and I are talking with one another about whatever we're going to be talking about. We're doing our best to make our guesses about who you are that are watching this, whether you're here watching it live as we are talking, or whether you're watching this after the fact on YouTube or whatever. We're doing our best to make our guesses about who you are and what you're interested in and how we're impacting you and how we're coming across to you. For those of you who are willing and able, we appreciate participating in the chat, because the more you say to us, the more information that gives us on which to base those guesses about who you are and how we're impacting you and what you're interested in. We do our best to read out chat comments as they come in, because we are simultaneously streaming on 3 different platforms: Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch. And whichever platform you're on, you'll only see the chat comments that are coming in from that platform. So we read it out so that everybody's all on the same page. We work with a private therapy practice in Illinois called Effective Artistry. Our office is located in Northbrook, Illinois. We do individual, couples, family, and group therapy with people in the states of Illinois and Wisconsin. We also work with a few coaches who can work with people all over the world via the internet. All of our coaches are executive functioning coaches. Each of them has additional specialties: parenting, business, creativity.
You got it all. I have a checklist in my head. You hit all of them. I do.
I'm going to take down my hanging back here.
I feel like at this point, next week I'm going to do this. I'm going to try to do it verbatim how you say it, because I feel like I know exactly what you're going to say, even the ums.
Really?
It just get to a T.
That'd be cool. Soon we'll have a different layout in here, which I'm excited about. The things will look differently. We'll even have a new camera and things.
Mm-hmm.
We're doing some rearranging here at the office. We're expanding and shifting things around. This room that we're meeting in is the office that I use, and also the office that we use for full group meetings. But as a practice, we're growing, and we have enough people that we don't quite all fit in here as it's currently set. So things will be shifted, and one of the nice benefits of that is going to be that it'll be like a straight on view probably of the two of us instead of this angled thing, and then I won't have to worry about the bag being hanging on the door behind my head and looking.
It's funny that, because I know with me rearranging my office, like I'm excited about that, but I'm almost like more excited / nervous for yours, just because I feel like it's been the same for so long, and like rearranging it, like it's such a I don't know, I've realized for me, like the environment and stuff, like even little switches can make such a big change. So
definitely
it's gonna feel so.
And I really like a lot of this arrangement. That's, you know, the room that we're currently in. I don't care about this, but like, so originally when I started this practice, we got this office suite with like 4 rooms. This is one of them, and it's a bigger room, so it was intended to be like a conference room / group meeting room. And as we've grown over the years, we've expanded. We absorbed the office next to us, the office suite next to us, and added a couple offices and a break room over there. And now we're expanding and absorbing the office the other side of us and adding 4 offices and a waiting room over there.
Yeah.
So as we filled up, before we expanded out, we needed 4 people in offices. So I shifted into this, what was originally the conference room, so that it could be. I didn't want any other of the therapists working here to have their space be the full group meeting space.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But it also, like, this room is too big for like just an individual therapist's office. So I've got it like.
Not for you, Brandon. I feel like I feel like I couldn't see you in an office the size of mine.
Well, I mean, effectively, I've got like, I don't know, a third of the office over here kind of cut off.
Yeah.
Right, like the seating area is all set up over here, and then where you see that like shelving and whatever, it's just there's that and like a little pathway to walk past it. So that's not really like a used part of the office, but it is. This is the right distance to be away from people that you're meeting with. When we end up shifting to be against the walls, people are too far away. It's not the optimal distance to be, but it's also, we have enough people now that cramming everybody into this smaller seating area gets real hot and uncomfortable.
Sure does.
So we need to spread it out a little bit. But it's exciting.
It is exciting.
Yeah.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. I'm all right. Yeah. I've been sleeping the best over the past few days. But feeling good. You know, emotionally doing all right, and
That's good.
physically doing all right. Yeah. How are you?
That's good. Well, one, this is so silly. I like that just got really distracted because I'm looking at my water cup and I'm so mad that my lipstick always gets off of it. Like gets on it and it drove me nuts. Other than that though, I don't know why it's bothering me. I'm doing so. I feel like I was gonna say I'm doing okay, but I feel like that would be a lie. So I'm doing so. Going through, I guess, some medication changes, which is always a up and down battle, I guess, for me overall. And then take into account too that my partner is on a work trip this week, so he's not home at all. He left today, so knowing I'm gonna be home and like be by myself and the cats, which is fine, but not the same as a person. But yeah, just trying to ride the wave of that.
Yeah, well, I mean, kind of like what you were saying about the office change, that any change, it's not that every change or any change is difficult or there's a lot, but any change can be difficult, and it's not always possible to determine in advance accurately, like what changes are going to be things that are going to impact me more and what ones less. But certainly changing medication, depending on like the types of medication and what changes people are making, is a type of change that can often be like a lot to balance through, especially anything that has psychoactive components.
Right. What was I gonna say? A little spacey right now. I think the reason why it's more difficult, like the medication changes and just changes in whether it's medication or your day to day or whatever. I think why it affects me so much is because this is just a guess, but before when I was kind of ignorant and wasn't really aware of too much going on, I would change things and I would be fine. I wouldn't think about it. And I think after, becoming more aware of myself and like, taking care of my body more and taking care of my mind more, which are all good things, it almost makes me like, dang, I'm doing all these great things for myself, but now it's making me more aware of any little off change in my body. And then it's just harder to like get out of like that, like negative loop, I guess.
Yeah, well,
I blame you for making me so aware of things as a therapist.
That's fair. I often apologize to staff and clients in advance of like, look, the whole point of this is that there's going to be stuff that we're paying attention to that you haven't previously like really been paying much attention to, haven't either had the opportunity or haven't thought it was worth it. And once you start paying attention to something, if it is useful to pay attention to it, it's very difficult to it's impossible to go back to not paying attention to it.
Right. What was the word you used? If it's beneficial?
Yeah. If paying attention to something is useful to you in some way.
Oh, useful.
Like if you, I might have said beneficial. Either way, like if we pay attention to something new and it doesn't seem like, I want to say as far as we can tell, it doesn't do anything for us, but it's not just a conscious process. There's the processes that dictate what we notice are not conscious, even though they're impacted by conscious experiences. So if our systems, if those processes have any reason to believe that it is valuable to pay attention to this, we're going to keep paying attention to it.
Yeah.
The only way that we go back to not paying attention to it is if other stuff becomes like a bigger problem and we don't have the opportunity, or if it's just not happening and we're not exposed to it to be able to notice it. But also when you start paying attention to something new, so you can't like unsee it once you see it. But we humans have this default response to things which are new, that it's bad. Right. Because obviously that's not always the case, but if something is new and different and we don't know what it is, it's important to identify, like in terms of survival, it's important to identify, is this something that's going to hurt me? So we evaluate things in that way first, and only after having enough time or experience or whatever to be like, oh, this isn't bad, it's actually useful. Then that like I don't like noticing it part goes away. If that makes sense.
No, it does.
Like for me, when I went through a process of becoming like more aware of paying more attention to my body and how it feels and whatever, like yeah, there's a lot, and I'm still, I don't want to claim that like everything's fully integrated at this point, but especially earlier on, and for a few years there was a lot of health anxiety of like any sensation would be like, what is this? Is there something wrong? Like immediately, like what organ is in that area? Is there something wrong with my kidney? Or like,
I want to let you know that was just me thinking like, I've been feeling like this for 6 months and I'm over it. And you went through it for years?
Yeah, I mean, I still deal with the health anxiety stuff sometimes, but not very much less. And I'm pretty good these days about clocking it as like when it happens, that's a sign that I'm like depleted, overexerted, tired, whatever. And that's like something that comes up as a sign of that, as opposed to treating it as like, oh no, there probably really is something going on with me.
Yeah.
Right? We've talked about before that if you're walking down the hall and you pass somebody and you say, look at your shoes, then the immediate response can be like, what's wrong?
Right.
We that's built into like language and communication and attention is cognitive miser. We don't spend resources without a reason. So if somebody else is calling your attention to something, our first default assumption is like, oh, they're warning me about something. Like that's probably the origins of language. The first verbal communication stuff was likely, we'll look out for that problem.
Right.
So we check that first, and that's fine. But the sooner that you are able to kind of integrate the idea that it's not necessarily a problem, that it's actually can be beneficial to get this new information, not that if I start noticing something that I haven't noticed before, one of two things is happening. Either the importance of noticing that stuff has increased, or the other stuff that I'm spending resources on, like, has gotten better, and therefore fewer of my resources are going to those other things. And so even though the importance isn't higher, I'm now able to pay attention to this.
Because your other resources are freed up?
Because I have more spare attention, right? And so we start with that assumption that if I'm noticing something I didn't notice before, it's because it's gotten more important. So if I notice a sensation I haven't noticed in the past, I don't think like, well, that's a sensation I could have noticed in the past. It's always been, I've never noticed it. How would I come to that conclusion? Right. So instead, it's like something got worse. That this sensation is worse than it was, and then it is logical. Like if I'm noticing a sensation or a discomfort or pain that I didn't notice before, and that means that it's worse, then like that is worth paying attention to and saying like something's getting worse.
Right. That makes sense. But let me look at the comment. The first words George of the Jungle ever learned was "Watch out for that tree."
Yeah, I've got that theme song playing in my head.
Me too. Like.
I haven't watched it in forever, but I liked the Brendan Fraser movie when I was a kid.
I'm not gonna lie. As soon as I read that comment, I was like, I really want to watch that now. I really liked that movie, and I just never.
I like it there's a lot of movies I liked when I was a kid, and some of them I've gone back to revisit. And when I do, I'm like, oh, that doesn't hold up super well.
Really?
Some. Especially as a parent now, if I like think about trying to watch some of that stuff with my kids, I'm like, oh, I don't love that part or whatever.
Interesting. Oh, now I'm too much in the Disney mood in my head. Such a fantastic movie. It is. I actually like the live version a lot too.
Honestly think it holds up. Well, there's only a live action movie. There's the
God.
You're thinking of Tarzan.
I am thinking of Tarzan. I like them both.
George of the Jungle, like the original thing was a cartoon, I don't know, probably from like the 60s or something, that was kind of like a spoof on Tarzan, like making fun of Tarzan. Not making fun of it so much as being like, let's run with this premise and be a little silly with it.
That makes sense. Yeah, that's funny.
Anyway, sorry, you were saying something before about change, noticing new things.
Oh yeah, no, that makes sense. But then it's like, what if you're noticing? How do I say this? Like noticing something that's not new, but the intensity is getting higher. Isn't that something then to still pay attention to?
Well, sure. Just real quick, most of the movie is oriented around making fun of weird white men and super rich people.
Yeah.
Sure.
Being a blast from the past right now. I never thought about this movie for a long time, and now, yeah, that does track.
Yes. So that's the thing, right? Is if we're talking about I'm paying attention to something because it has become more important to pay attention to it. One version of that is that the thing itself has become more intense.
Right.
So like something that was like discomfort under at a low enough thing that it was like below the threshold of what I'm noticing, but that discomfort has grown and become bigger, and now I'm noticing that's increased intensity. Another way that things become more important to notice is with a cognitive understanding, like that even if the signal itself hasn't gotten more intense, we become more aware for some reason that that kind of information is useful to pay attention to. Does that make sense?
No.
Think of it as like, let's say you've got a notification set on your phone for your bank account app or whatever, that if I go into overdraft, give me a notification, right? So you go below zero and it's like, ping, you're below zero. It's like, oh, shoot, that's bad, right? So in this scenario, when I'm getting down to like 100 or 50 or 10, I'm not noticing it. I'm not getting the notification. Only when I hit zero does it go. So that's where like the increased intensity, the less money I have. Another version though would be to like, you know what, I'm going to change my notification so that it notifies me when I go below 100 instead of below zero.
Okay.
So now I'm going to notice it more and earlier, even though the intensity isn't more.
Okay, that makes sense.
So when it comes to like body physical stuff, a lot of the work that we do as therapists and as individuals, especially as we get older, it's like, oh, you know what, it would be more worth paying attention to how my body is feeling. And so we can't know, like, is it a more intense experience than it was in the past, or am I just paying closer attention to it, either because I can or because I've realized it's more important than I thought it was.
Right. Oh, I would assume you would set up your notification for higher than zero.
One would hope. Although, honestly, like, especially because we're using that as a metaphor, and especially for people who identify as being neurodivergent, like a lot of our, especially body noticing stuff, is kind of set at zero. Like I sometimes don't notice the need to go to the bathroom until it's like, oh, I can't wait, I gotta go now. Right. Or I don't notice that I'm like tired until I'm like, what I call being tired is this. Right. And I agree, you want it to be higher. The problem is that resources are finite. So if we kind of set our notifications on a bunch of stuff across the board at higher and higher levels, that just everything's going off all the time and we can't pay. So then we're trying to find the balance of like, I want as early a warning as possible without be getting just warnings about everything all the time.
This is connecting in my head. I hope this isn't too much of a segue, but bringing it back to the original thing about like the medication, changes in your body, medication, whatever. I always hear like from doctors or from whoever I'm working with, like, oh, sometimes it gets worse before it gets better. And I think that's where it trips me up so much, is because I'm so quick to like, oh, I'm out. I don't want to deal with this. But then it's like, now, like, I don't know, like, if the intensity and all of that is getting so bad, how do you decipher, okay, is this something that I can just prolong and see if it gets better, or like, should I just put it to like a stop?
Well, it depends on the thing, right? So this conversation started around medication, and without making any assumptions about what kinds of medication we're talking about. Often, obviously, in therapy and that kind of stuff, we're talking about psychoactive medications. But kind of the point we're talking about getting more aware of your body is that even things which don't have a psychoactive component, if it changes how your body is functioning in some way, it can still result in some difference in your thoughts and emotions, right?
Yeah.
This, for me, is like one of the reasons it's so important to distinguish between therapy and medicine as two different categories. Because let's start with assuming that, like, I'm diabetic. I know that's a example I use a lot for medicine, but it's just relatively well known and whatever. If I change the medicine that I'm using to control my blood sugar levels or whatever, then obviously, like, if my blood sugar levels are way too high, then that has an impact on me both physically, physiologically, but also psychoactive, brain fog, lethargic, whatever. So by changing the medicine, if that brings my levels in line, then I'm thinking more sharply and et cetera, right? Now, let's assume that I switch the medication I'm taking for diabetes. And for whatever reason, as a side effect, I am now like getting more anxious. Like, we could argue that potentially I'm just paying closer attention to signals in my body because I'm trying to monitor the new thing or whatever. But for whatever reason, I start taking it. I'm like, ooh, I'm more anxious than I was before. It's very important that we be able to separate my emotional experience,
Mm-hmm.
which is unpleasant, and we don't want to have to deal with it any more than is necessary. But we separate that out from, and what impact is the medicine having on my like physiology, right? Like,
Okay.
if theoretically taking the medicine that's going to save my life from diabetes makes me more anxious, then like that sucks, and I would rather find a different one. But
Mhm.
it's still saving my life, and that's better.
Yeah.
So one of the things that can be difficult with medication changes, especially psychoactive ones, is that people focus in on the emotional experience of it.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously some, like, antidepressants and anti-anxiety, like the entire point of those is the emotional experience. So you should be focusing in on that.
Sure.
But other ones, they have other elements, other components to them. And it is entirely possible that even though the emotional experience is less pleasant, the medicine is actually doing what it's supposed to do, or it's doing a better job of some kind.
Mm-hmm.
So we want to measure those things separately.
Okay, that makes sense.
And
it doesn't make it sound any easier. I mean, it makes sense logically, but
yeah, it doesn't necessarily make it easier. Sorry, I have a lot of trouble getting enough sleep, and I think maybe a decent part of why is just that I'm very good at ignoring being tired. So if I'm very tired, it becomes harder to override the impulse to procrastinate on going to sleep. Cue spiral. I've been wondering whether it might help to just try to practice feeling tired more, if that makes sense. That does make sense, and a version of that is an intervention or an exercise that I've done with people. Like, maybe one of the most, of all the things that I've done with clients, that's one of the ones that I've done the most times in my life, probably, is some version of tracking energy levels. I'm really not getting the sleep trigger, but maybe I can find it if I try. Maybe, and I want to say more about that, but let's finish up this and then maybe come back to that. We're talking about psychoactive, right? So ADHD medicine, as an example, when I take it myself, and when I'm working with clients who are taking it, to be clear, therapists don't recommend taking medicine or not taking medicine. We're not allowed to suggest that you should or should not, or should explore it. We're not doctors, and we don't have the requisite training to be able to say that. So I'm never working with clients on like, you should or should not take it. But I'm working with clients on it in the same sense that I work with anything, right? If there's anything in their life that they're changing or wondering about, maybe trying this might be better, then I'm going to help them track it and pay attention and, theorize about what might be what. And if there is anything that they're wanting to explore changing in the medicine, they take that and go talk to their prescribing doctor about it. So ADHD medicine is one that comes up a lot in my work. And I try to make it clear to people that if you're evaluating psychoactive medicine based purely on how you feel about it, it's a terrible way to do it. Because the whole point is that if it theoretically is impacting you, it changes the way that you perceive things. So as a baseline, saying like, here's how comfortable I feel or how good I feel about something emotionally in an abstract way now I'm taking something that changes the way I perceive things and whatever. And now here's how comfortable I feel with it. That's comparing apples to oranges. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, it does. It does make sense logically, but I don't know. I feel like
it would kind of be like, let's assume that I have something going on with me that like raises my internal body temperature a bunch or whatever. And so I'm now like really cold all the time. Everybody else is talking about how warm they are, and I'm like, it still feels so cold in here to me. And then we find that out, and I take some medicine or whatever, and it lowers my internal body temperature.
Okay.
So we wouldn't want to evaluate the effectiveness of that medicine by saying like, do I feel cold as much or not? Because as it changes, as it impacts me, what I consider to be cold also changes.
Okay, no, that makes sense.
So if I'm taking ADHD meds and theoretically they're supposed to help me focus, we'll say. Focus is obviously something that's like meaningful, but it's a construct. It's not like an empirically observable, this is what focus is, and we can track it in some objective way. So if it's like, I didn't feel focused and now I do feel focused, that could be that it's an increase in whatever things we're saying constitutes focus.
Right.
Or it could be that stuff didn't change at all, but the way you perceive things now is like, I think of myself as being more focused, even though I'm behaving
Okay.
the same.
No, that makes sense. Every time you do the second example, it always clicks for me. Every time I'm like, a little bit more. Okay, I got it.
So what I encourage people to do then is, if you're considering taking medication of any kind, and the same with any intervention, if you're considering trying to like eat something differently or start doing this hobby or stop talking to that person, any change you're considering it as a potential solution
Mhm.
to some problem. So first we want to identify, what is the problem? What is the thing that is different than you'd want it to be? Sometimes that's negative aims of like, there's this bad or unpleasant or painful thing happening and I want it to stop. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's things are fine, but I think it would be even better if X, Y, or Z. Either way is fine. Identify what is it that like is different right now than I want it to be. I want it to be better, whether that's less painful or just more pleasurable, whatever. And track that at a baseline. See what your experience of it is as you're coming up with your interventions. I'm going to try doing X, whether that's medicine or whatever. Start tracking the baseline on that stuff.
Okay.
And try and make that stuff something that can be tracked in like observable, doesn't necessarily have to be empirical, but observable ways. And then when you start using the intervention, you want to track that stuff still too. So like for me, when I first started taking ADHD meds, a couple of the problems, two ones that I still track to this day, there were more at the time, but is I used to, on a regular basis, I'm going to say every day, I'm sure it wasn't literally every day, but pretty much every like weekday, work day, I would get really tired from right around like 1, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, like to the extent that it'd be hard to keep my eyes open. And I was hoping that that would go away, which it does to this day. When I take my medicine, I don't experience that. And not every time, but sometimes if I don't take my medicine, I do still experience that. Another one was when I was like, okay, time to move on to a new task or time to start doing something. How long did it take me to determine what is the thing that I'm about to go do now, right?
Okay.
Like, whether I have my list or whatever it is. If I'm like, I got to do something and I spend 45 minutes being like, what is it that I should be doing or whatever. Or if I spend 5 minutes being like, here's the next thing to do. That's what I'm moving on. And that's something that, again, to this day, I notice does much better when I take the medicine than I don't. Part of the reason that I want to do this, yes, is to see like, is this effective? Is it helping with the things that I want it to help with? But also because even if it is working later on, so I've been on my ADHD meds now for 5 years, about roughly. And like that, I take it every day with rare exceptions.
On the weekends too? Like every day?
So it's not like that's my new normal, and it's been that for 5 years. So I can no longer access this feeling of like, I'm more focused. Because that I don't have any recent comparison of like how I usually am to this. So even if at first you're like, no, I can tell a difference, as time goes on, if you're using it regularly, you won't be able to tell that difference as much.
Okay.
In the same way that like, if you're going through your life and all of a sudden one night you wake up or one morning you wake up and your back just hurts in a way that it didn't used to before, like at first you're gonna be like, oh my gosh, I'm really focused on it and like what's going on. But if your back just hurts that way from now on, then you start to learn different ways of maneuvering and working around it, and you get used to it. And even if you do think like, oh, it sucks that my back hurts, it's hard for you to pay attention to it as like some big new thing.
No, that's really helpful. That is helpful.
So you want to track stuff separately, and that's especially important when the point of the medicine is not psychoactive. Right? It theoretically does impact or can impact how you feel, but that's not why you're emotionally feel, but that's not why you're taking it, right? If I am sick, like diabetes, right, and I start taking something to address that medical condition, and it makes me feel emotionally worse, that doesn't mean that the medicine isn't working.
Correct.
We could say that it means it has a side effect, an unpleasant or an unfortunate side effect, and we factor that in of like, is it worth continuing? Depending on what the side effects are and what the benefit are, we factor in like, is it worth it? But we want to track those two things separately.
Okay, no, that makes sense. I also just want to get back to the sleep. I don't want to.
I'm really not getting the sleep trigger. So part of that is, okay, I believe that it is true of you, uniquely true of you, not like the only person in the world, but like I believe that it is true that as compared to the average person, you are paying less attention to the signals of what we're going to call tiredness. There's a lot that goes into that, and a lot of that is like culture-wide stuff. Is that like, you know, a simple thing, for example, is since the proliferation of the electric light bulb, like everybody, their circadian rhythms are not as aligned with the sunrise and sunset as we used to be because it's less relevant to us. That's not to say that it's completely irrelevant, but it's changed, right? So there are things like that where there are like, as time goes on, we invent things. The fact that we're in like air conditioned stuff makes it so that we don't, like, here's a natural thing. You get more tired when you're cold, when you're in a cold environment. Like even when people end up freezing to death, the subjective experience of that is like just getting sleepier and sleepier and sleepier until you fall asleep.
Really?
Well,
no, I'm sorry, not with that part. I mean, like, with getting like that being colder makes you more tired. I feel like it's the opposite for me.
Well, there's a thing about like a rapid change to that.
Okay.
Right? Like blasting cold air in your face will wake you up or whatever. And certainly it makes you less comfortable. So within like certain tolerances, whatever. But the body temperature, so like your metabolism slows down when you're asleep. Our metabolism slows down when we sleep. So our body temperature drops by like 3 or 4 degrees when we're asleep and then rises again. So one of the parts of the process of falling asleep and waking up is we can track people's body temperature dropping, and then we can track people's body temperature starting to rise like 30 to 45 minutes before they wake up as one sign of the process that's leading towards waking up. One like simple practical tip is that if you have the option to, and I know not everyone does, but many do, you have the option to set it so that the temperature in your home is like 3 degrees colder when you're sleeping and then warms up when you're waking up back to the 3 degrees higher. We do become more lethargic as it gets hotter and harder because like physical movement and whatever takes more resources. So we're incentivized to like not do a lot of that. But that's one of the other things that's going on here. Oh, I have been sleep deprived since middle school. I'm very good at it. Yeah, I mean, a funny way to put it, but there's truth to that, right? That like, it's important. It's evolved into our bodies because it's important that it's like, hey, if you sleep right now, you might die. So we have systems built in that's like, even though in theory it would be optimal to sleep right now, in practice, this is not a safe place to sleep. You got to get some stuff so we can push through that and miss these optimal times to sleep and rest. The downside of that, obviously, is that it's not sustainable. That like, you're effectively, think of it as like going into debt. You know, our optimal cycles are built around like, you earn $100 while you sleep, you spend $100 through the day, and you can do that forever. And then there are these systems in us where it's like, you're out of money, but use the credit card or whatever, because if you don't, you're gonna die. Or there's gonna be a big problem. So we do that. And in our culture, we, for many reasons, good and reasonable reasons, we focus way, way more on cognition and emotion than historically humans have. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying in comparison, we pay a lot, we notice it a lot more. In large part, at least, like one reason that is inarguable is that we're in physical discomfort so much less. You know, we have HVAC and indoor plumbing and soft seating surfaces and whatever. So that frees up a bunch of stuff. Are we husband and wife? No, we're not.
No.
We work together. So we that's deliberate, right? Like we have, over history, we've done things to try to increase the people's physical comfort, decrease physical discomfort and deprivation, make it so that people have more leisure time, more time to be able to think and talk and whatever.
Right.
There's some benefits, a lot of benefits to that. There are also some unfortunate implications or downsides. And one of those is that we're more focused on that stuff than we are designed to be. That isn't to say we focus on it more than we should. It's just more than our systems are designed for.
So when I hear you say that, it does sound like you're saying that it is, like you're not saying this specifically, but it sounds like you do think that it is a bad thing.
But
I wouldn't be able to work with Brandon without getting distracted by his luscious hair. Which shampoo do you recommend?
I wish I could. I don't. I just use whatever. Although I do try to use like a shampoo conditioner combo.
Really?
When I started growing my hair long when I was younger, but didn't take care of it at all, and then started growing it out again, 2020,
Mm-hmm.
and tried to like figure it out more. And I learned that like using shampoo strips your hair of its like natural
Yeah.
oils and whatever. And when your hair is longer, it takes a longer time for those oils and whatever to get from your scalp through the whole thing. So the longer your hair gets, the less you want to do that. And conditioner kind of puts protective stuff back
Right.
in, so it's better to do a shampoo conditioner at the same time. But I don't have like a particular brand.
What shampoo do you use? I actually don't.
I don't use shampoo very often. I did. This is embarrassing, but I'm going to admit it, even though I think it's mostly a joking question. I'll answer it honestly. That when I was growing my hair out again, I started looking at like what does Jason Momoa do for his hair.
Oh my
Like, I
gosh.
found an article by like some his hair care person or whatever. They recommended a brand of conditioner called O&M.
I've never heard of that.
O&M.
Is that in a drugstore?
No, I had to order it online.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's like $16 for a bottle. So I think that, I don't honestly know. I think that's more expensive than what you would get regularly, but I don't think it was
Nothing
real
that
expensive.
crazy, no.
So usually when I wash my hair, like half the time when I wash my hair, I just do conditioner.
So you use Jason Momoa's hair stuff?
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
He and I have some similar ancestry and like similar hair type. And at the time I was also in better shape, like bigger, muscular than I am now. And people would keep telling me that I looked like him. I was like, well, then I might as well. I mean, I said it jokingly, but I also like truly do believe that Jason Momoa has done a lot for us ethnically ambiguous guys. Like we all talk about this. I know this started at a silly place, but we all talk about this in culture generally of like what is represented in culture impacts how people see things and respond to things and whatever. And as like a mixed race person, not having like prominent models, prominent examples of like what mixed race people might look like or whatever. So then when there is one, and now there's somebody that like people compare me to, this thought of in our culture as like a beautiful person.
That's awesome.
It's like that means something, not just to me, but like I think about people like me that like, there's a quote from Mindy Kaling.
Who's that?
She's a writer and director and actor. She was a writer on The Office. She played Kelly on The Office.
Oh, that's her. Oh, yeah, I knew the name
like,
sounded familiar. Never mind.
She had the Mindy Project and stuff. And she said in an interview or something one time, or maybe it was on a commercial, I don't remember, but it stuck with me that she said, when I was trying to break in or whatever, they told me that they don't put people who look like me on TV. I guess they can't say that anymore.
Wow.
They're like, that means something, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway. Polynesians believe that it's the defining characteristic for performance in any endeavor. Oh, what, hair? Is that real?
I don't know.
Seems overbroad, even if there's validity to it, but I don't know. My ethnic ancestry is difficult to categorize. I don't think so. Like a large part of it is Indonesian, which I don't think people generally would consider to be Polynesian, but also isn't usually considered to be Asian. I don't know what category people generally would put Indonesian into.
I don't know.
But like certainly I think it is, in my mind, I think of it, as Pacific Islands, whatever, like there's distinct culture, but there's distinct culture on every group of islands and whatever.
This is making me want to go into my own ancestry. So curious. I've been curious about that for a long time.
I think it's interesting stuff for sure. I think I don't get into the details necessarily of, maybe someday I will, but of like specific genealogy of like this person did this thing and this person did this thing and whatever. But I do like to know at least a little bit about. I think narrative matters a lot. And so what your family's narratives are, like I care more about that, more about the stories that we all tell and understand about where we come from than I do about like, getting documentation of whatever.
Right. You mean like stories passed down like from? I'm confused. Like passed down like from your ancestors?
Sure, but I just mean like, so okay, like we're getting way off of where we were. And I do think it'd be good to go back to sleep stuff at some point, but race and ethnicity and all this stuff is like way more complicated than generally people understand or like have reason to even try to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Race in particular is not a biological reality like everyone thinks that it is. Race is a societal construct.
Right.
So like whiteness as a race is not a thing. That's a concept that didn't exist before America, not in any like significant way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like prior to the United States of America. I don't mean America, the land. I mean the European settlers who came over to this place and then started the United States of America. Prior to that, it was like, you know, Frenchmen or Gauls or Britons or whatever. There is like some validity to the underlying idea of like the American melting pot. I think people overplay that certainly and act like it's more of a inclusive thing or more of a done deal than it truly is. But especially early on, there was like people coming from different Western European countries and then claiming a new identity as American and whatever. That's part of why still to this day people talk about like Italian American or Irish American, especially immigrants, as like being othered.
Yeah.
Because there is an assimilation process even in like whiteness. Anyway.
Yeah, long hair. It's a bit of a joke, but I can't read.
Papua New Guinea.
I can see.
That's my dad.
Oh, is it?
My grandmother was born in Papua New Guinea.
It's considered the westernmost island of Polynesia. That's where island ancestry started.
Is it too much of an annoying white person thing to hear? I have Indonesian heritage and immediately say, "Oh, hey, I can count to 10 in Bahasa." No, I don't think that. To me, that does not correlate with whiteness. Although certainly I understand the like humorous representation of whiteness that has developed over, especially the last few decades of like vanilla-ness or like whatever. But no, and I don't speak Bahasa, even though I did live in Singapore for a while and spent some time in Indonesia. I did not grow up speaking any other language. I also didn't grow up with what I would say are like strong cultural influences from my ethnic ancestry. You know, like not that there was nothing certainly, but that like Indonesian culture or Chinese culture or German culture or whatever. It wasn't like our culture. I grew up Mormon. My family members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That was our defining culture. It was more than any ethnicity. My sister lived in Indonesia for a bit and taught me a few words. Indonesia is an interesting. I mean, I haven't been there much, but a little, and it was wonderful. Of course, I was in like my time in Indonesia was spent in like beautiful vacation areas. But it's also this like, it's a hugely populated country that just doesn't get thought about or talked about very much on the world stage. Like even as compared to like in the United States, people are relatively aware of like Filipino ancestry, but there's not much. I can't think of any time I've ever seen or heard somebody in a TV show mention Indonesian.
Never. That's wow. I didn't think. Yeah, no.
Which is Indonesia is the most populous Muslim country in the world, and nobody talks about it when we talk about Islam. Like,
why do you think that is?
I don't know. I have some theories. I think part of it is like the geographic location of it, that it's just geographically not very close to like what would generally be thought of as like the most centralized, like powerful areas in the world. It's an island chain that like it's not part of Australia, it's not part of Asia. Is Oceania a continent? No, not really, but sometimes we talk about that. I think it just doesn't like fit very well into categorization, where Filipino and the American understanding of it does fit into like Hispanic. You know, like Filipino I would bet that like most Americans who are aware of Filipino as like an ancestry or an ethnicity would be surprised to find out that the Philippines are an island or a group of islands out in the Pacific Ocean. I think people probably would just assume that it's like a South American country, which is the Philippines was a Spanish colony and Indonesia was a Dutch colony.
I feel bad that I can't talk more about this because I feel like I do not know anything about geography.
Americans often don't,
Well,
and that's not
doesn't make me feel any better.
world geography. Americans often don't know a lot about world geography. Part of that, I mean, we can talk about, certainly I think there are unfortunate implications of that. I don't necessarily look at that and be like, oh, Americans are just ignorant and don't care about the world. Although I think that there's at least some correlation there. You know, like American culture is global. You can't go anywhere in the world and not like have American movies there, and American music there, whatever. Part of it, though, I think is America's geographically a huge country with an incredibly diverse array of like biomes and ecosystems and whatever. So, in Malaysia, Indonesia might be the largest archipelago, thousands of islands. And Malaysia was a British colony. Malaysia's in there too. Southeast Asia generally, like Thailand, Vietnam, Laos, all that I think gets kind of lost.
Yeah.
Anyway,
the segues on here is incredible.
I know, right? So part of that is like you can travel a bunch and go to like all different kinds. In fact, like I don't know that this is true, but off the top of my head, I'm going to say I'm not sure that there's any significant biome in the world that you can't find within the political borders of the United States, especially with Alaska and Hawaii. And so, we Americans don't focus as much, like, whereas European countries, for example, are much more aware of other European countries, but most Western European countries are like roughly the size or significantly smaller than many of the states in the United States. So like someone from France being as aware of like German culture and English culture and Portuguese and Spanish and whatever is similar to like someone from Illinois knowing about Wisconsin and Indiana and Iowa.
Yeah, I suppose.
One of my favorite things about living in LA was having an Indonesian restaurant down the street from me. I love when you get enough density and population density to have things like that. Agreed. Like having access to different world cuisines is maybe not like one of the more important aspects of it, but certainly one of the most enjoyable aspects of having like a diverse population.
That's why I think the one thing that makes me really like the city so much is because of that too.
Hi, friends. Hi, Caitlin.
Hi, Caitlin.
I also grew up primarily in Utah, which is very interesting in that regard, in part because of the Mormon church that, as many people know, like Mormons, young Mormon men especially, will go on missions to like go throughout the world and preach Mormonism and then come back.
Did you do that?
No.
Oh.
My dad did. And because of that, there's like a more diverse population than people generally would expect in Utah. There's a very like there's not very much of a black population in Utah, and I'm just theorizing about stuff now, narratives and stories and stuff. And I think that's part of why it gets thought of as like a not very diverse place. There is legitimacy to Utah being less diverse certainly than other places as well. But part of it is I think that a lot of what Americans conceptualize as diversity is like primarily oriented around the black population.
Yeah.
But because of missionaries going out and coming back, there is a lot of like people who get converted. Like there's a huge Polynesian population in Utah.
Oh wow.
Like if you're aware of NFL or college football and you hear a Polynesian sounding name, then or a Hawaiian sounding, then that person is probably from either Hawaii, Utah, or California. But even aside from that, there's also a lot of like, without a large population, there's still more demand for international cuisine. So there's more like international cuisine restaurants in Utah
Wow.
because there's enough people that have been to certain areas and love that and like bring it back with them and like start a restaurant or whatever. Anyway, we're all over the place. Let's back up.
You wanted to go back to sleep?
Yeah. Before the comment about my
Ugh. He won't live it down now. We shouldn't have told him that.
Yeah. Sleep. We don't have as much time. Sleep is just really complicated.
So is everything.
Yes. Yes. That's one of the downsides about how much we utilize and pay attention to cognition is like we understand so many things and we get so much benefit out of like a cognitive or intellectual exploration or understanding of things. And so then we kind of just apply that to everything. We want to understand everything and figure everything out. And that's just not how things work. It's useful to have understandings, but even the most useful understandings, that saying that all models are wrong, some models are useful from statistics, right? It's just about what's useful. But then this thing, and specifically with tiredness and with sleep, it gets, who needs sleep? Well, you're never going to get it. Fast, I think my boys still like when I make Indonesian style fried rice and satay shish kebab. I find sleep is less complicated in days that I exercise. I think there is a correlation there that's worth exploring.
Yeah, I will say just because when I started working out in the morning, now at nighttime I'm so tired and I love it because it's the first time where I actually was able to notice it without just putting on something and my partner turns to me and I'm just like clocked out on the bed. Like I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, so one of the things that I think is useful and that I work with people a lot is tracking different kinds of energy. Because I think one of the things that gets lost here, or one of the things that causes this problem, is that we use tired, that concept and that language of tiredness, to encapsulate a lot of different things. And so it inherently is very difficult to track. And so we don't spend a lot of resources on paying close attention or trying to track it on a non-conscious level, because it's like all kinds of stuff all over the place. And when I say sleep is complicated, I'm talking about like just the physiological process of falling asleep and waking up is something that, like, to my knowledge, like even the most advanced science we have on it still doesn't like quite explain a bunch of stuff. Where it's one of those things that like we really don't know a ton about it, even though we all sleep all the time. It's obviously very important. But what we do know is that there's like a bunch of different systems in the body that all go through certain processes in the process of going from being awake to being asleep or vice versa. And that all those different systems have to coordinate and do certain things in certain orders with other systems. And if anything gets out of order, it disrupts the whole process and whatever. So I do believe that when people are like physically more active during the day, that often does help them to fall asleep better at night. Because I think in our culture, like we've been talking about, we don't pay very much attention to our bodies as a general rule. And I don't mean like in any way. I mean in terms of like being aware of the sensations that our bodies are experiencing.
But weren't we just talking about in the beginning of this call how people can become so aware of their body sensations?
Yes, but the premise of that is that we're talking about that you and I both started off by not being very aware of it and then going through a process of it, as opposed to, at least in theory, historically, you would be much more aware, like a human would be much more aware of the things their body is experiencing because there's a lot less comfort.
Right.
You know, like if I have a rock in my shoe, I'm pretty aware of that. And so, you know, when you don't know how much food, and I'm talking about evolutionary history, right? Like hundreds of thousands of years, millions of years, whatever. Not just like the last 1,000 or few thousand years of recorded history or whatever. That you don't even know if you're gonna have enough food.
Right.
Like, you don't know where is a safe place to shelter. You have no advanced knowledge of the weather or what is, when storms come or whatever. So yeah, we just likely our ancestors did not have a lot of opportunity to sit around and think and talk about stuff.
Yeah.
Because you just had to get stuff. Like if you imagine that right now there was like a zombie apocalypse or whatever, civilization's wiped out, and now we live in the woods and don't have access to grocery stores. Like, how much are we going to be sitting and thinking and talking about like our feelings?
Right, that's true.
You just don't have the opportunity. So the version of tiredness that we are mostly talking about, and this is especially true, I think, of people who, like we're talking about, struggle to notice when they're tired or struggle to get enough sleep, is cognitive tiredness. We're paying attention to like what thinking is like for us, not so much necessarily physical tiredness. We're in fact like encouraged and incentivized to override that.
Yeah.
And we were talking about there are systems that let you bypass, like it would be good to stop and rest now. And I can just push anyway because it's important. Well, like take something just as simple as school and how we're whatever, that like if you got to stay up late to do your homework, I'm not saying everybody does that all the time, but as a general rule, it would be accepted by people of like, yeah, if you need an extra half hour to do your homework, stay up and do your homework and then go to sleep. It would be more uncommon for someone to be like, nope, go to sleep when it's time to go to sleep, even if the homework's not done.
Yeah.
So we prioritize like getting things done based on the utility of those things, not really based on our access to resources or the condition that we are in.
That makes sense.
So we mostly think about cognition and don't pay a lot of attention to our body, but these different systems do have to align. And so oftentimes people who are like, I have a hard time sleeping, the version of what is happening, and this is important as you're doing this, is to think, what do I mean by that in more specific terms? Am I getting into bed and then sitting there unable to fall asleep? Am I falling asleep before I get to bed or before I would want to? Am I going to bed later than I think would be optimal? Whatever, right? We don't pay as much attention to our body. And so everybody has the experience of feeling like antsy, right? If I gave anybody the assignment, if we theoretically took everything off your plate, you had nothing but free time, you could do whatever you want, no problems. And I was like, stay in bed and sleep for 24 hours. We wouldn't do that. Or at least we wouldn't want to. Like at a certain point, you're like, no, I want to get out of bed and move.
Right.
And if whatever the condition is of the person's body that we register as that, like I want to get up and do stuff. If that's happening and we try to go to sleep, oftentimes that doesn't really work very well.
Yeah.
So just like you can stay up too long and eventually like you lose the opportunity to choose to sleep or not. Eventually you just fall asleep. The same is true of being awake. Eventually you lose, there is some window of choice to be like, I'm going to get up and stop sleeping now, but eventually you lose that and you're going to be awake even if you don't want it.
Right.
And so some of this, like having trouble falling asleep, is that at the time I'm trying to go to sleep, there's something that's going on that's like, no, you can't sleep right now because you're supposed to be moving. In the same way that even if I'm like, I want to be moving, it's like, no, you're supposed to be sleeping.
Right.
And a lot of the time that has to do, I think, in our culture with physicality. That like, I can have an incredibly, in fact, this is my life, the fact that this is my work, thinking and talking and whatever, it's very common pretty much every day for me is like an incredibly exhausting and draining day cognitively and emotionally, interpersonally, while physically speaking, not very taxing at all.
Yeah.
And so then later I'm like, I can't even think. I don't know what I want to do. I can't make decisions, whatever. But my body's still like, yeah, we're rested and like it's not time to go to sleep yet. So that is sometimes the issue. I know that generally when we're talking about this kind of stuff, people will more commonly be like, I can't get my brain to stop. I'm just thinking things while I'm trying to fall asleep. Or I wake up in the morning and I want to get up and do stuff. There's that common concept these days of revenge bedtime procrastination. I didn't get to do as much as I wanted to do during the day, so now I'm staying up late to do it.
Right. That is driving me nuts. What is that sound?
That?
There's like a constant beeping noise.
1 second.
What is happening? Uh-oh. I'm going to read the comments while he's gone. That sounds incredible.
An alarm in one of the therapist's office.
That?
Yeah, like a alarm clock over.
That's a crazy one. Okay. Who else is going to pay attention to bodies except for the storyteller sitting around the night watch campfire sharing information? Sorry, that was me joking. Oh, it finally stopped. I don't know, it almost sounded like a fire alarm for a second. I was getting a little nervous, but I think it has stopped. Anyways, sorry, now I'm just distracted. So annoying. Again, another thing of being hyper aware of things is when I'm aware of something and I'm paying so much attention to it when I go and I'm still thinking about it. Oh.
What a funny coincidence. It's one of our therapists apparently got a new clock. That clock thinks that it is 7 a.m. and had an alarm set up to go off at 7 a.m. And I would highly recommend to not use alarm clocks like that. Obviously, that's not the intention here. It's just a clock, but.
Ask Brandon about storytellers.
What did we say?
Except for the storytellers sitting around the Night Watch campfire sharing information.
Oh, yeah, we've talked about like theories about how culture would have been set up, for people to specialize, some people to specialize in being awake at night instead of the day. There is, and I'm not like very aware of this stuff, but I am aware that there's research that supports the biological underpinnings of like early bird, night owl. There are, and I have theories about that, including theories that suggest that it would be as our culture shifts and everything, that like more and more and more of us would become more oriented to being awake at night rather than during the day. The fact that we now live in a culture in which like any random person, of all the things that they do, whether they're things that are like important to do or work or professional or enjoyable, like hobbies, whatever, like a significant portion of those things can be done any time of the day or night. You can do it at 3 a.m. if you want. Obviously, there's lots of things that you can't do at certain times of day. Businesses close and most people are asleep and whatever. But a lot of leisure time activities, you can do that at 3 a.m. just as easily as you can do it at 2 in the afternoon. A lot of work-oriented activities, depending on the work that you do, you can do in the middle of the night. So, anyway. So yes, that does often help for people because like working out, moving your body, whatever, aligns those kinds of processes where like you're getting cognitively tired and physically tired at the same time. And because we don't really like track physical sensations of exhaustion or tiredness or whatever, it tends to work out best that we just figure out routines that make it so that like without us having to like consciously pay attention to it, we get tired at about the time that we're cognitively trying to go to sleep too.
Do we need to wrap up?
Yeah, I'll give one quick thing because the more commonly reported thing is that like I have a hard time, my thoughts are racing and I can't get to sleep. I would point out that's to whatever extent that's true, that is also a phenomenon that would occur in part because we pay more attention to cognition than physicality. So even if there are nights where like it's our body keeping us awake, we wouldn't be very aware of it in that way. And if we're awake and trying to sleep, we're going to be thinking about, I don't want to go to sleep right now. And because we pay attention to what we're thinking, it's like, oh, I can't sleep because I'm thinking about how I want to go to sleep right now. I think there's truth to that too, but like we also disproportionately notice it. Anyway, here's the easiest, like, and most general. Well, no, let me say two things. One physical one. This one surprised me, but if you look at the research, the one like in terms of changing how you go throughout your day or like the environment or whatever, the one factor that seems to have the largest impact on sleep is stop eating or drinking anything 3 hours before you want to go to sleep. It's obviously not the only thing, and it's not like 100%, but more than any other single behavioral change or whatever, that's the one that impacts it the most. The other thing I'm going to say is you got to give your mind something to occupy it. You literally cannot get yourself to go to sleep by thinking about going to sleep. The whole point is that cognition is shutting down. If you're trying to use cognition in an effort to get yourself to go to sleep, you're keeping cognition, the system, running in order to use it.
I would have thought that would make you tire out because you're using cognition, so then you're getting yourself more cognitively exhausted.
It does tire you out, but being tired is not the same as going to sleep. Like we said, we have those things, right? So if I'm tired, if I'm cognitively tired and exhausted, whatever, and then someone's like, you got to do this math or you're going to die. Like my systems will activate and be like, okay, we got to do it.
Right.
So if I have established a cognitive task for myself of like, it's really important, the common version everybody knows of this is like, if I go to sleep right now, I'll get 6 hours. We're identifying like, falling asleep is very important. And the way I'm going to do it is by thinking about how important it is.
Right.
But by thinking about how important it is and using cognition to try to solve the problem, I have to keep cognition running. I can't shut it down.
That makes sense.
So instead, what you want is to do something that calls your attention. We'll talk in more detail some other time, but like activate sensitive or utilize sensitivities here. If you are sensitive to certain types of data, utilize that kind of data. That is, takes enough of your attention that there's not a lot left over for you to be like, and now I need to fall asleep or
Right.
whatever. Also takes enough of it so that you don't have that like spare space that you can just start thinking about random stuff, because if that happens, sometimes it's fine, but sometimes the processes that make up our minds are like, ooh, let's think about this thing that's like really important that we forgot to do today. It's like,
Yeah.
So you want to occupy it with something that takes your attention, but isn't actually very important. Doesn't require much physical activity in order to continue to do it. And this one is important to me. I think this one is important. Can be stopped at any point without issue. So like one thing that other than that last one would qualify for most people, and people use a lot, is to watch TV or watch videos.
Yeah.
It's occupying your mind. It's not real problems. It doesn't require much physical movement. The problem with those things, though, is that they come in chunks. Like there's an episode or a 10-minute video or whatever.
That's why I'm big on the games on the phone at night for me. I've always heard that's like a bad thing, but it's not, because I feel like mine's ongoing.
Yeah, the thing with games on the phone is it requires more like physical activity to do. A little
barely.
bit, but like, there is a reason that like reading at night is one of the like most commonly suggested, and like it meets all the criteria.
Yeah.
Unlike a game, which I also have had times where I like played a game, and a lot of the time the game that I'm playing, it's like you start a game and this game lasts for 1 to 2 minutes or whatever, or until you solve it or whatever.
Yeah, and it just pauses.
And that incentivizes you to like finish out the game. So even if you're like starting to fall asleep, you're like, let me just finish this or whatever. And there is truth to this concept of windows, falling asleep windows, where like you got everything aligned, and then a moment will come where it's like, now I fall asleep. And if you push past that window, like, no, let me stay awake. And that happens with reading too. There are times where like, no, I want to read more than this. If you push through that window, depending on how long it takes, like you can come out the other side of it and you've missed that window.
Right.
So a lot of what will happen with watching stuff is like, I'm just going to finish this episode, and then by the end of the episode, something exciting has happened and I missed my window, and now I want to start the next episode.
That's why I had to stop with the shows, because that's what I was doing every time. Then me and Jeff were just up for like hours finishing a whole season. And I'm like, oops.
Yeah, reading is great because when you stop, it doesn't continue. Whereas like listening to a podcast, watching a show, playing a game, whatever, if I stop, it keeps going. And so then when I pick it back up later, I have to like figure out where I was at. Which is not a big thing, but it is a little bit of incentive to try and like turn it off before I go to sleep or whatever. Whereas reading a book, once you fall asleep, that's not going anywhere, and it's not something that can disrupt your sleep. It's not going to be an episode that auto plays or some sound that jumps out or whatever. Personally, I use a Kindle, and we can talk more about that. But we'll talk more about some other time. I got to wrap up. There's so many things I want to say, but that's a generally helpful one for people who are having a hard time falling asleep. Is give yourself something once you're in bed that occupies your mind, isn't a real problem, can be stopped at any point.
Right.
Thanks for the stream. Oh, haha, joking or not, we all like our skills to be valued, even the simplest of them. I don't know what that's in reference to, but
I agree.
Agreed. All right, good to be with you all. We'll
Good
be back
to be
next
with
week.
you. Have a good week.
Bye.